Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bear Down Ballers here on the field of 68. I'm Ryan Wall, joined once again by Jordan Pollock. And Jordan, 2025 is here. And to close
Mhm.
out 2024, the Arizona Wildcats won three straight games for the first time this season to move to 7-5. They're over 500. They beat TCU 90-81 on December 30th this past Monday. How are you doing today? And what are your first thoughts about this big victory to open up Big 12 play?
I'm doing good, and it's good to see this team at least make somewhat of a name for themselves, getting their first Big 12 win. They started hot, and they kind of let TCU get back into the game. Though Noah Reynolds did have an amazing game. I loved watching that kid play. It seemed like he just could do no wrong. It seemed like half the time he was touching the ball. But all in all, it was a great win. I thought something that Arizona definitely I think needed to do, especially with the flow of the game. It was just very intuitive to how I think this team can play well and work together and win games.
Yeah, this was overall the best victory of this Arizona season. It's that simple. Arizona has struggled in so many facets of the game. They've struggled with turnovers. They've struggled with production from their stars, and they've struggled on defense. And they really were good on in every area that I just mentioned. But Jordan, the guy that I want to talk about first, and that deserves to be talked about first, is Caleb Love, because we've give Caleb Love his due, and he has been bad, and he was quite bad to start this year. But he was unbelievable against TCU. 33 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, 11 for 17 from the field. He made 5 3-pointers, almost 50% from there. He was just excellent in this game. He was confident. He played with poise. And to me, another big thing of with Caleb Love's game is when he's hitting his shots and clicking on offense, it translates to defense, because I saw some of his best defense in this game against TCU. He was active in the passing lanes. He was aggressive. He was pressing up on defenders. I was just really impressed by Caleb Love. This is the guy that we expected to see, and this is the guy that we hope to see in his fifth year in college basketball. What do you think about Caleb Love in this one?
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought his shooting splits when he shot inside the arc, he didn't miss, which were mostly layups. And I know he had a great dunk that was off of a KJ Lewis steal right at midcourt. But he played a great game. I thought his shooting splits were great. He was able to even get to the foul line a few times. And I thought one thing that I got especially through just the pace of the game is it didn't really feel like it was only Caleb ever doing it and doing like everything. And to finish with 33 points and not feeling that way, I thought that was great. And I thought that's probably one of the better recipes for this team to win. I
Yeah.
know because it felt like there was times last year where it was like it was all Caleb or it was nothing, to where the offense was still flowing. It wasn't just Pat swing the ball around a few times and then Caleb gets it and jacks up a shot. Like he played very well within the offense. And I remember one of his baskets that he had right at the rim was just off of a simple basket cut from
Mhm.
Jaden Bradley. And nothing speaks more into playing within the offense than getting quick dishes for layups. So he played a great game.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I think that shows the development from Caleb this year and throughout the year, because I totally agree. When I watched this game, I felt the same way. It wasn't like, oh, Caleb needs to get his 15, 20 shots and everyone else is just going to move out of the way. It seemed like, yeah, it was part of the offense. He wasn't forcing anything. He wasn't chucking up 3-pointers that were heavily contested. Yeah, everything he got in this game was just came to him at the right time, and it just seemed that Arizona played a great brand of basketball in this game. Just like they got everyone involved. They had 28 assists on 33 made field goals. That's another area that we always talk about. They did it a lot better in that area Henry Visar finished with 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Lewis added in 9, Toby Awaka and Bradley had 9 and 10. So everyone did a little bit of everything and got involved in this game. So yeah, I really think this was a complete game for this Arizona team. And it just shows that Caleb Love still has a 20, 30 point game in his bag when he wants to. And it just shows that he can still turn it up because I'm not going to lie, earlier in the year, I started to question, can he still be that guy? And I think when he can, and him showing that he can be that guy still and still score at a high level, that still shows that Arizona has a pulse to be a legit contender in college basketball this season because Jordan, we could just say it flat out right now. There's not many guys that are capable of scoring 30 points in college basketball.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And I think those concerns I think were well granted, like he was not putting up high statistical categories in the scoring department, which is what got him Pac-12 Player of the Year last year, and that just kind of seemed like a glaring missing component in a lot of their major losses, like we talked about last week, like 0-5 in quad one, and there was never a game where it was they played bad, but it was never a game I felt like, oh, like from the start, this game was over. It was like once the game got rolling and they got in a groove that just didn't translate well to kind of what the players that they had on the court. That's kind of when they started to lose a lot of momentum, and then when they'd get down, then they couldn't defend super well, and then they'd have to try to be over aggressive. Um, and so I think what another thing that I kind of want to talk about in this game, and we talked about it last week with TCU, is just how low scoring of a team that they are. And so to see them with 81 points, I do think that is still concerning defensively. And they did shoot very well. Like they shot better from beyond the arc than we did. Um, but I still think that is still a pretty big concern, and just like how they are defending the 3 point line.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You mentioned Noah Reynolds earlier. It seemed like him and Alante were really getting whatever they wanted in this game. Although the stats don't back it up, I still think that the effort level that Arizona put out this game on defense was still one of their better, if not their best showing of the year on that end of the floor. The stats may not back it up, but I think that Tommy has his players moving in the right direction, and they're clicking pretty well here when you get into Big 12 play. They play Cincinnati this weekend, this Saturday. We'll get into that in a little bit. But when you get into conference play, this is what you need to show. You need to show that you can win in many different ways and that you have many different options on offense and on defense. And a guy who stood out to me a lot in this game was the freshman Carter Bryant. He only had 7 points, but he had 3 rebounds, 3 for 6 from the field. He, like I said before the season started, he can give you that KJ Lewis off the bench kind of energy that KJ did last year. KJ still brings that, but KJ's playing 30 plus minutes in a lot of these games. He's still playing a starter type role off
Yes.
the bench. But Carter Bryant is just that guy is like a bolt of energy. When he touches the ball, it's electrifying every time. Whether it be lob dunks or whether it be finishing at the rim. He even made a three in this game. Another thing is I think his 3 point shot is he's not hitting it at the best rate right now, but I still like his jump shot. I believe in that as the season goes on. So yeah, I thought he was pretty good in this game. What'd you think of him?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think just being able to get athletic freaks on the court that don't necessarily hurt you in ways, especially with his youth of being a freshman, I think it'll only help you long term towards the end of this season and what he can bring with the more experience and the more team building. And that's another thing. Like the big thing with this team right now is consistency, especially now that it's been reported that Mo Rivas is out for this season. Now some pieces of consistency are minutes and what the minutes are going to look like going forward. And I think what we saw in this game was I think this is probably going to be likely what the minute stretches look like for I I would be um I would definitely be concerned if they are not like this going forward because that would probably mean somebody is either hurt or somebody's not playing up to their level. So I would definitely expect Vasar, Bryant, and KJ to continue to get a majority of the bench minutes, but the consistency that these guys can have now that they're going to get these minutes of being on the court together, I think is going to be really helpful for them going forward.
Yeah, and with Krivas out, I'm really looking at Henry Visar and Carter Bryant specifically because they're coming off the bench. Obviously, Toby Awaka is in that starting center role right now, but even Visar and Carter Bryant's a long, rangy 6'6" plus guy, can play multiple different positions, can play bigger, smaller, and then you got Visar, who I'm really impressed by his production and the level of intensity to see that he's been playing with as of late, I've been impressed with. I think he's been growing throughout the season, and that's what you look to see, and that's what you need because with Krivas out, that's one less body and one less talented big man. And we've talked about it even from the start. This team wasn't deep in the front court, so they're gonna have to see even more production and more effort from those guys that get those minutes. Besides those guys in this game, did anyone else stand out to you or did something positive that you liked?
I think like you said, I thought Toby Awaka, I thought some of his post moves I was super impressed with. I know he had a pretty clutch basket late in the game off of a post fee and a post move that kind of helped them keep ahead when TCU was kind of trying to make a last desperate attempts to try to make the game a little closer. And so if they can get guys that continue to be consistent in the roles and not play over or outside of the rules, I think that's a big thing that's really going to help this team a lot going forward, especially with those role players that are like I said, still trying to kind of get their flow and trying to get consistent with their teammates on the court.
Yeah, for sure. Arizona picking up this victory, moving to 7-5 on the season, 1-0 in the Big 12. I'm really impressed by the way this team in the last 2 weeks has got this thing back on the right track, moving forward. Will they continue their winning streak this week and in the future? Time will tell. We'll get into that later, but when we're come right back in just a minute, I want to get into the recent commitment from one Bryce James to Arizona. All right, we're back, Jordan. And before we get into Cincinnati, let's get into the new Arizona Wildcat commitment. And that was from Bryce James, the brother of Bronny James and the son of LeBron James, the all-time great NBA player, a Mount Rushmore player. His son has committed to Arizona to play basketball. He's not the level of prospect that Bronny was out of high school. Bronny was a five-star player recruit. Bryce James is, according to 247 Sports, he's a three-star rated prospect. He's ranked 257th in the country. He's a shooting guard. He's 6'4". He's ranked as the 46th best shooting guard in this class as of right now. He chose Arizona over teams like Duquesne, Ohio State, USC, and he comes to Arizona with such a obviously with the James last name, and it brings so much pressure for him and a big spotlight, but he seems like he's going to be more of a developmental type player, a guy that Tommy Lloyd can develop for 3 to 4 years. What are your overall thoughts on getting another member of the James or another member of the James family in college basketball to Arizona and just what this means for the program as a whole to be in the LeBron James business?
Yeah, I think. I think if it was just that, I don't think I would have really that part of a time with it. I think the thing that I think has me hesitant is the era of college athletics that we live in with the NIL and the transfer portal. So I think there could be problems that arise pretty quickly with assuming like class of 2025 becomes in this year, they bring in a whole bunch of new transfers and say hypothetical because half of this right now is hypothetically speaking. Like this fall comes, this winter comes, they don't start off well. Everybody's demanding that like, oh, Bryce needs to get on the court. Bryce needs to get on the court, and then other schools start coming in, and it's just like a mess with the the undisclosed recruiting that can happen amidst the transfer portal, especially with guys that are in programs where they're like not the top guy or they're will try to get to their ear like, oh, like you're being mistreated, your coaches aren't playing you for these dumb reasons, you need to come to this school and play. So I'm definitely a little nervous for those reasons, but I think apart from that, I don't see an issue with this. Bronny was a solid player at USC. I wouldn't go really any further than that. He averaged less than double figures in his 1 year with USC. He was a solid role player for that team, and that team had a bunch of injuries, and they even beat U of A. I remember the last week of the regular season, right before the Pac-12 tournament,
Yeah.
and I think with the train that kind of has taken off since Bronny left USC, I think that's probably, I think, more so the thing that people are kind of pushing, um, with just all the controversy with him being selected by the Lakers and his contract that's like
Yeah.
guaranteed, but it's like a two-way contract. And
Yeah,
so
there's no, yeah, I
no,
just want to jump.
those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, because there's many avenues to break down. So
Hmm.
first, when I heard this news, and we know he was at Arizona months ago when Arizona played Duke at the beginning of the season to visit, and when he committed, one thing popped in my mind, and that's was that it has to be under the understanding between Bryce James, LeBron James, and Tommy Lloyd and Coach Murphy and the rest of the coaching staff and the program that this isn't going to be like Bronny. He's not like Bronny. Like I just said, Bronny, people forget, was a top 20 recruit in the country, or even better on some outlets. He had the major issue that occurred, and so that kind of halted his freshman season and halted his growth. That does not mean before that happened with Bronny, Bronny was an elite player, and I think that people have this thing where they think LeBron is so demanding, and he can be, and he can try to get what he wants and push people around when he wants. But I think when it comes to his kids, actually, he's done a very good job so far when we saw it with Bronny of taking a step back. And people will say, will push back on that idea because when Bronny did enter the NBA draft, it was the complete opposite. But before Bronny entered the NBA draft, people forget Bronny was coming off the bench for that USC team. He wasn't
Hmm.
playing 30 minutes a night. He was when he got after he came back from his health scare, he eased his way back in and there was no reports then, about LeBron pushing for Bronny to play more. And I think, like I said, LeBron is one of the most intelligent basketball minds of all time that this game has ever seen at any level. And there's no way that he doesn't know where his son Bryce fits in the college basketball landscape. He has to know that he can't push him along like he did Bronny to get him to the NBA in 1 year because that's just not going to happen because the reason Bronny got to that level where he could is because he still had that underlying theme where he was a five-star recruit less than a year ago from when that
Definitely.
happened. That's not the case with Bryce. And so I think it's a win-win. Long story short of trying to get to this, I think it's a win-win for everyone involved because I think the I don't think say Bryce was at Arizona for a couple years. It didn't work out. He either went to another school or tried to go to the G League or something after that. I don't think the expectation for Bryce as a player are super high. So that's why I think it's a win-win. I think he's a talent. I've watched some of his clips here and there. I think he and games. I think he's a talented player. He's not as athletic as his brother. He's not the ball handler his brother is, but he's a good shooter. He's a good scorer. And I think this is an upside play. And I think when you combo that with being a James, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah. And I think one thing I'll say, and I believe I read from reports that was some of the reasoning that I think that camp even leaked was because of Tommy and the development that occurs. And I think the era of college athletics we live in is like I'm kind of curious, like, yes, like Palo Larson like was here for 3 years and like he definitely changed, but he walked in as like a role player, you know? So I think the idea of development in this era of college athletics is very hard because guys will transfer up and transfer down specifically for playing minutes and for
Yeah.
opportunities. And so there's very few times where we see guys like stay at a place for 3, 4 years and develop. Like as a Wisconsin fan, Frank Kaminsky is like the pillar of that guy that can develop. Frank Kaminsky didn't play at all his freshman year, played as barely a role player in the front court his sophomore year. And then his junior year, 3 years into the program, building muscle, going up against starters that were fourth and fifth year seniors while he was 18 and 19, helped him so much. And even after him, Ethan Happ, another Wisconsin like really good center that came along. But that's just something we don't see nowadays in college athletics. So I think that's one thing that definitely kind of has me in a pause because that's just I think the idea is probably still there, but we just don't see it really nowadays, really at all.
Yeah, and I also feel like with any young guy, with any 17, 18-year-old, I feel like from 18 to 20 is when people grow a lot. So Bryce could get there and like you said, be in a college system for a year, year and a half, and then he could start to make an impact. And I think that that's what this move's about. It's about staying. It has to be about going to a place, making it your home, your new home, and staying there for a couple years. Because, like I said, this isn't going to be a short-term thing. But I do think that when you have that level of bloodline and you still have some talent, obviously people are posting his high school stats. He's only averaging in like 5 games. He's only averaging like 6, 3, and 2. Like he's not starting. He's not lighting the world on fire like Bronny was in high school. But I think to get a guy with that bloodline, to get a guy that still has talent and that young, and to, like you said, there's not a lot of guys to buy in long term. If you could get Bryce James to buy in for 3 to 4 years and tell Bryce James right now, which is probably something like Tommy and the coaching staff told him, like, you might not play a lot your first 2 years, but if you stick around and, you build and grow in this program as a junior and a senior, and we know there's a lot of guys that play in their fifth year now, you could potentially be a big impact player for this program. And I think
Yeah.
that's why Bryce and LeBron wanted to come to Arizona. Arizona is one of the biggest brands in the country. They have the Nike connection with LeBron, obviously.
True.
And whether LeBron's in the league or not when he's at Arizona, LeBron will be making his way to the McCall Center, to Tucson, Arizona. And to get that guy in the building is going to bring so many eyeballs to the product. Whether his son is on the court or not, when he is in the building, it's just good for everyone. Because if LeBron comes around the program, not even 2 games, and comes around the program and works out with some of the other players on the team, it just helps everyone involved. So I really think that it's a no-brainer. And like I said, it's not it's a low it's a low floor play, but I think the upside still is higher. So I think when you can do something like that, it's not bad at all. And there's not you'll never see another 3-star guy who isn't even in the top 250 right now in the rankings to get this much coverage on him, and even
Definitely,
when he starts next year.
definitely.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Jordan,
I completely agree.
yeah, well, let's talk about the game this week. This Saturday, Arizona heads to Cincinnati to play the Bearcats, the 10-2 Bearcats, the ranked number 16 in the country, but they did lose on Monday night after they were ranked 16. 70-67 they fall to Kansas State. They lost to them in a very tight one. They're 10-2 on the season. They also lost to Villanova. Some of their big wins are against Georgia Tech, Xavier, beat 22 Dayton a couple weeks back. This Cincinnati team is having a great year. They hit a roadblock earlier this week. What do you think about this matchup? Because this is the Arizona's first true road test of the conference season. Obviously, they did go to Wisconsin, tough environment, but this is their first real Big 12 environment as a road team. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Wes Miller, he's been there a few years. He was at UNC Wilmington before that. Had a few good NCAA tournament appearances. Cincinnati is kind of people around there say like they've had some football success the last 5, 10 years when they had Luke Fickle, but outside of that, it's a basketball program, and you can see that easily looking at that big game that they had against Xavier, which is a cross city rivalry, and it was kind of their first time winning that game in a few years, I think. So that bodes very well for Cincinnati. And we are talking before, and it's kind of hard to, I think, especially grade teams, and especially Cincinnati, like not like they beat Dayton, and Dayton was one of the very few ranked teams that they've beaten so far this year. But the thing is they have a ton of talent on their team. Some are saying they have the most talent Wes Miller's had since he's been there, and I think I have been pretty surprised how well they've played so far this year. But I think it's going to be a great game. It is still break, so I think the student presence probably won't be as high as it would be during the semester. But I expect a pretty high scoring, tough game.
Yeah, I think this is will be a tough game. Cincinnati is a tough defensive team to say the least. They've held opponents to under 70 points in their last 8 games, actually. So they've
Mhm.
done a very good job on the defensive side. Their best guy on offense, Seamus Lukosis, he's averaging 14 points, 3 rebounds, almost 3 assists, but he's shooting the ball 41% from three. He's their only starter that's shooting the ball over 40%. They're only at 35% as a team, but a guy to look out for this Cincinnati team is they do have a 7-footer, Aziz Bangdagogo, if I'm saying that correctly. He's averaging 9.5, almost 2 blocks a game. The guy is really talented. He could be a mismatch for Arizona when Arizona plays smaller. But overall, this team, I think, matches up well against Arizona. Like I said, it's a wait and see to see Arizona in some of these Big 12 environments. As you said, this isn't going to be the best of Big 12 kind of atmospheres, but it'll still be something. Something is better than nothing. This game is taking
Definitely.
place this Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Tucson time, 2:30 p.m. on the East Coast. It's on ESPN2. Arizona is off ESPN Plus for this game. I'm going to go with Arizona to win this game. They're on a 2-game road trip. They play West Virginia on Tuesday. We'll get into that earlier next week before that game tips off. But I think Arizona is going to beat Cincinnati in a very close game. I think Arizona is going to win this by 3 points. I think it's going to be a nail biter at the end. But this is when you need the veterans to step up. This is when you need guys like Caleb Love to be on your team to show Arizona the way on the road. So I'm going to go with Arizona. What's your prediction for this game, Jordan?
Yeah, the Arizona Daily Star, they just came out with an article talking about the connections with Arizona and Xavier, and now that Sean Miller is there, and they're going to be on a road trip this weekend, and so they're actually opening up some of their facilities to Arizona men's basketball team. Um, I think they're quoted having a home away from home, which is really awesome, and seeing some of those um, old Arizona Wildcat relationships continue to build. So that's definitely a great thing going for them. I still do not think that that will be enough for them to get a win. Um, and I think this will put them at 0 and 6 probably in the quad one. But yeah, um, I just think it's going to be a really tough environment and something that they're not going to quite be used to yet. I think it'll take them a little bit of time to get used to these Big 12 matchups. But I think it'll be a close game. I think just a little over, like you said. I think Arizona's going to lose this game by about five, 2 possession game.
So we're kind of right there, very close on the opposite side of things.
Mhm.
But either way, I think this game will be very close. But fun fact for everybody viewing, watching, and listening out there that Arizona is 4-0 against Cincinnati in program history. The last matchup was in 2022. Arizona beat Cincinnati in Hawaii in the Maui Gym Invitational. They've actually played twice in Hawaii, and all four of those were in neutral sites, actually. So Arizona's won all four of the matchups. Cincinnati has yet to beat the Wildcats. Will that change? We have yet to see, and we'll find out this Saturday afternoon. But Arizona, after Cincinnati, as I said, plays West Virginia on Tuesday, January 7th. We'll have a recap of the game versus Cincinnati, preview the game versus West Virginia next time. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for watching, viewing, liking, and subscribing. I'm Ryan Wall. He's Jordan Pollock.